What would you do if years after being abandoned in the snow, you suddenly came face to face with the very creature that once saved your life? For Ethan, a boy rescued by a mysterious bear in the darkest winter night, that question became real. In the middle of a joyful school festival, the crowd froze in fear as a giant shadow appeared through the falling snow. But while everyone else ran, Ethan stepped forward. Could this be the same guardian from his childhood? Watch until the end to witness a moment that feels like a miracle. And tell us in the comments, do you believe animals can carry God's love in ways we can't explain? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to spread this story of hope. The winter in Denver stretched endlessly, cloaking the city in a muted gray veil, where snow fell steadily from the sky and the howling wind scraped against windows like unseen fingers. Inside a modest two-story house near the edge of town, 16-year-old Ethan sat by the frosted window, his body framed by the pale light of dusk. Ethan was slender and slightly taller than most boys his age, his frame wiry from years of hardship, with sandy blonde hair that often fell untidily across his forehead and sharp hazel eyes that carried more weight than a teenager should bear. His skin, pale from both the season and his past, contrasted against the dark wool sweater he wore, and though warmth surrounded him, there was a distance in his gaze. Ethan's life had been marked by abandonment, cruelty, and an unexpected salvation that no one would believe if they had not seen it. Years ago, on a night not unlike this, his father left him in the freezing wilderness, bloodied and broken. Yet, instead of death, fate brought a miracle in the shape of a giant bear, whose immense form had become a symbol of protection and silent strength in Ethan's memories. That memory lived in him still, so vivid, it sometimes felt like a wound that had never fully healed. Now, surrounded by the family of Grace, the single mother who had taken him in and raised him as her own, Ethan was safer than ever. Grace was a woman of 38, tall with dark chestnut hair tied neatly when she worked, her kind brown eyes and steady voice giving comfort to those around her. Though firm with her children, she was tender in ways that revealed her deep compassion. Her daughter Anna, 10 years old, was mature for her age, small and graceful, with light brown hair and a thoughtful, serious demeanor. Michael, the younger son at 7, was shorter and more timid, with wide gray eyes that seemed to drink in the world with both fear and curiosity. And then there was Ranger, the loyal German shepherd with thick black and tan fur, a vigilant dog already 8 years old, whose protective instincts never failed and whose bond with Ethan had grown as if they had always belonged together. Yet despite this circle of love, Ethan often found himself haunted. As the wind howled outside and the snow lashed against the window, his heart tightened at a sound so faint it could have been imagined a deep, resonant rumble, like a growl rolling through the forest. His breath caught, his eyes widened, and for a fleeting second he swore he recognized it, the very sound of the guardian who had once carried him through the storm. But how could that be? After all these years, was it merely the echo of memory? Or was someone, or something, still watching him? The snow outside had grown heavier by the week, layering rooftops and sidewalks in thick white blankets, while the little neighborhood near the school pulsed with the laughter of children walking home in scarves and boots. Inside one of the modest houses, the warmth of Grace's kitchen contrasted with the biting cold. The smell of stew filled the air as she moved between stove and table, her tall frame steady, her chestnut hair tied neatly at the nape of her neck. Grace had always carried herself with a mixture of quiet authority and maternal gentleness, but tonight her eyes kept flicking toward the front gate, visible from the kitchen window. There, as always, stood Ethan. 16 now, taller than before, his shoulders broader yet still carrying that shadow of fragility that no growth spurt could erase. He leaned against the gatepost in his dark coat, snowflakes collecting in his messy blonde hair, hazel eyes fixed on the line of trees beyond the street as though waiting for a signal only he could hear. Grace wiped her hands on her apron and sighed. For years she had watched this boy claw his way back from trauma, had seen him smile more often, laugh with Anna and Michael, and even find comfort with Ranger at his side. Yet in these moments of silence, when the snow wrapped him in solitude, Grace recognized the weight of longing in his posture. It frightened her, the thought that part of his heart still lived in the forest with the memory of a beast that once cradled him from death. Stepping outside, the cold bit her cheeks as she drew her coat closer. She walked across the path and placed a hand on Ethan's arm. His body was tense, but his eyes never wavered from the distance. "Ethan," she said softly, her voice almost lost in the wind. "You don't need to search for the past to prove who you are now." At last he turned to her, lips curved in the faintest smile. "I know, Grace," he whispered, though the determination in his gaze betrayed his calm tone. Inside his chest, an invisible thread pulled relentlessly, binding him to something beyond her reach. Grace shivered, not from the cold, but from the certainty that no words could sever that bond. The schoolyard shimmered under strings of golden lights, lanterns swaying as children darted across the snow-packed ground with laughter trailing behind them. It was the annual winter festival, a tradition where families gathered to sip hot cocoa, admire ice sculptures, and forget for a while that the cold could be cruel. Grace, wrapped in her wool coat, stood beside Ethan, Anna, and Michael. Her brown eyes softened as she watched her children's faces glow in the lantern light. Anna steady and responsible even as she held Michael's mittened hand, Michael's gray eyes wide with awe at every flicker of color in the night. Ethan stood slightly apart, taller than his siblings now, his lean frame outlined against the brightness. Though he smiled politely at Grace, there was a certain restlessness in him, like he was listening for a melody hidden beneath the noise of celebration. Music played, a lively tune that made the crowd clap in rhythm, and the air smelled of cinnamon pastries and roasted chestnuts. For a fleeting moment, Grace believed the festival might ease Ethan's quiet burdens. But just as she exhaled in relief, a sharp cry cut through the merriment. "Bear!" someone screamed. The sound split the night like glass shattering. Parents yanked children close. Stalls toppled as people surged back, and laughter turned into terrified shouts. At the far edge of the yard, through the curtain of snow, a massive shape pushed forward. The towering form of a gray bear emerged into the open, each step deliberate, its thick fur heavy with clinging snowflakes. Grace's heart stopped. Her instincts screamed at her to grab the children and flee. She clutched Anna's shoulder, ready to pull Michael into her arms, when she felt a firm hand press against hers. Ethan, his hazel eyes, wide yet unwavering, locked on the giant creature, as if the chaos around him no longer existed. There was fear in his quickened breath, but beneath it a deeper recognition, a bond unbroken by time. "Don't be afraid," he said, voice low yet steady. His gaze never left the bear. "I think that's him." The bear towered above the snow-covered yard, its massive chest rising and falling as clouds of frosted breath poured from its nostrils. Each exhale echoed like a warning in the frozen silence, and every step of its heavy paws pressed deep into the whitened ground. The music of the festival had fallen silent, replaced only by the distant clatter of overturned stalls and the hurried footsteps of those fleeing into the night. Grace clutched Anna and Michael close to her sides. her heartbeat pounding like a drum in her chest. Her instincts screamed at her to run, but her eyes flickered toward Ethan. He was not trembling. Instead, he moved forward with a strange composure, as if pulled by an invisible force. His lean frame looked small against the towering animal, yet his hazel eyes were locked on it with recognition rather than fear. "Ethan!" Grace's voice cracked with terror, but he didn't turn back. Inside her mind, panic battled with helplessness. She had spent years protecting him, nursing him back from wounds both seen and unseen. Now, she could only watch as he walked towards something that had once saved him, or perhaps could now destroy him. The school's security guards, armed only with flashlights and long poles, rushed forward in a defensive formation. Their faces betrayed more fear than courage, their boots sliding on the icy ground. One of them shouted, "Back away, boy!" But Ethan shook his head faintly, his lips moving in words too soft for most to hear. "I was saved by him," he whispered. At his side, Ranger's body tensed. The old German shepherd lowered his head, ears pinned back, a low growl vibrating in his chest. Yet he did not lunge. His sharp eyes darted between Ethan and the bear, as though he too recognized that this was no ordinary encounter. Instead of snarling with aggression, Ranger seemed caught in a moment of hesitation, protecting yet yielding, as though granting Ethan the space to bridge an ancient bond. For a heartbeat, the world seemed suspended. The cold air biting, the crowd holding their breath. The bear's eyes locked with Ethan's. And in that silence, the unspoken truth settled on them all. There was something between boy and beast that no fear could sever. The world around him seemed to blur into silence, though the festival yard had erupted in screams. Ethan could hear the thundering of his own heart as he lifted his trembling hand into the cold air. His breath fogged in quick bursts, every nerve in his body screaming at him to run, yet his voice broke through the chaos in a whisper. "It's me. Do you remember?" The bear's enormous head tilted, snow cascading from its thick fur. For a single heartbeat, it froze. Its dark eyes fixed on Ethan with an intensity that felt almost human. Then, with a sudden rumble that shook the ground, the creature let out a guttural roar. Panic rippled through the crowd, and parents screamed for their children. Grace clutched Anna and Michael tighter, her face pale, convinced she was about to lose the boys she had come to love as her own. But Ethan did not move. His hazel eyes widened, not in terror, but in anticipation, as though he had waited years for this very moment. A strange calmness steadied his shaking frame, his mind whispering that recognition was possible, that love once given could not be forgotten. The bear surged forward. Snow scattered under its paws as the enormous figure barreled toward the boy. Gasps and cries filled the night. Some covered their eyes, unwilling to see what they believed would be tragedy. Grace screamed his name, her voice hoarse with fear. And then, just as quickly as it charged, the bear slowed. Its great weight pressed into the ground as it reared up slightly, then lowered itself. Powerful forelegs stretched out, encircling Ethan in a gesture that looked, to every horrified onlooker, like the beginning of an attack. But the pressure was gentle. Instead of crushing, the beast sank down, folding its frame into the snow, its massive body lowering like a throne awaiting its rightful heir. Ethan's breath caught in his chest as he realized what it meant. The bear was not here to destroy him. It was inviting him, just as it had on that night long ago in the forest. The schoolyard fell into stunned silence. Every scream, every cry, every frantic motion froze in place. The world held its breath as the boy and the beast met once again in a recognition that defied reason. The bear's eyes glistened in the pale glow of the lanterns. reflecting something that was not wildness, but memory. Its massive head lowered, pressing gently against Ethan's chest. The force of the gesture nearly pushed the boy back, but the warmth of it flooded through him, chasing away the sting of the cold. Ethan's throat tightened, his voice breaking as words finally escaped. "I never forgot. You saved me once. You are my protector." The crowd remained frozen, unable to comprehend what they were witnessing. Grace's heart hammered in her chest, her lips parted in disbelief. Anna clutched Michael's hand so tightly, his fingers turned white, but neither child looked away. For them, it was as though the stories whispered around their home had come alive before their very eyes. The bear released a low, resonant rumble that vibrated through the ground, a sound that did not threaten, but answered. Ethan's tears stung as he pressed his cheek into the thick, snow-dusted fur. In that instant, time itself seemed to pause, holding its breath for the reunion of boy and beast. The bear shifted, lowering its massive body further. With an instinctive certainty, Ethan placed his hand on its shoulder, climbing up onto the broad, furred back as if he had done so 1,000 times before. His body felt both weightless and anchored, as though the creature beneath him was not merely an animal, but a bridge to his own survival and past. Gasps rippled through the onlookers as the bear rose to its full height. Snow cascaded from its flanks as it straightened. Ethan perched carefully on its back. Grace could barely breathe, her mother's heart torn between terror and awe. Yet as the bear moved forward, its steps were steady, deliberate, almost ceremonial. It carried Ethan only a few paces, each footfall echoing with significance, until it stopped before Grace and her children. Slowly, reverently, it bent down, lowering itself to the ground. Ethan slid off its back, landing lightly on the snow. The bear bowed its massive head, as though offering gratitude not only to Ethan, but to Grace and her family for keeping him safe. Ranger broke the silence first. The old German shepherd bounded forward, circling them with joyous barks, tail wagging furiously, as if celebrating the impossible. The festival grounds had fallen eerily quiet, broken only by the crunch of boots as the crowd retreated in wide circles. Parents pulled their children behind them, not from malice, but from a deep, primal fear. The sirens of patrol cars wailed in the distance before fading into the night as 2 officers stepped through the snow, their flashlights cutting harsh beams across the yard. Behind them, the school's security team advanced cautiously, poles gripped tight in trembling hands. But the bear moved first. With a deliberate step, it swung its massive frame between Ethan and the approaching officers, shoulders hunched and eyes blazing. Its presence was not one of attack, but of shield, a silent vow to guard the boy it had once carried through death's doorway. "Stay back," one officer barked, his hand twitching toward the firearm at his belt. The tension in the air was brittle, ready to snap. Then voices rose from the crowd. Mothers, fathers, even teachers, people who had seen the impossible unfold before their eyes, shouted over one another. "It's not hurting him. The boy knows the bear. Don't shoot. It's protecting him." Their cries spread like fire, halting the officers mid-step. Ethan stood just behind the beast, his breath misting in the air, his hazel eyes wide, but unflinching. He felt the vibration of the bear's growl rumbling through the ground as it lifted its massive head. The sound that followed shook the very air, a thunderous roar that rolled across the snow-laden yard, not of rage, but of declaration. "This child is mine. I protected him once, and he still lives in my heart." The words were unspoken, yet every soul present seemed to hear them. Then, with a grace that seemed impossible for such a creature, the bear dipped its head low, almost reverently. It lingered for a moment, then turned, lumbering toward the forest. Snow swallowed its form, step by step, until it vanished completely into the white veil of the storm. Ethan's knees buckled, and he dropped onto the snow, tears spilling hot against the frozen ground. His voice cracked but carried clearly. "I promise, one day I'll return. Not just to be sheltered, but to protect you and all creatures like you." The wind howled, icy and sharp, yet within Ethan's chest a warmth burned steady, a flame of love that no storm could extinguish. In the stillness after the storm, we remember that miracles are not always loud. Sometimes they arrive softly, like the unseen hand of God touching our hearts. The reunion between Ethan and the bear was more than a memory. It was living proof that love and protection are threads already woven into the journey of life. Perhaps this is how God writes his stories, through second chances and friendships we never thought possible. If this story touched your soul, please share it. Leave a comment and subscribe to help spread kindness. May the Lord bless and keep you always. And one day, the boy who was once saved in the snow will return to the wilderness as a man, no longer the weak child being sheltered, but the true protector he was meant to become.